When last we left, it was July of 1861, and we saw General Irvin McDowell advance his troops down to Manassas Junction, where he engaged PTG Beauregard and proceeded to rout Beauregard off the battlefield. In fact, Beauregard lost all of his brigades, and whatever was left ran all the way back to Richmond, Virginia. Now, we did not see McDowell pursue, as it didn't seem like a good idea. At least I didn't think it seemed like a good idea. I'm sure McDowell didn't either, so he's still sitting in Manassas Junction. We also saw the U.S. Secretary of State, William Seward, break diplomatic relations with Britain. And in addition to that, the U.S. decided to take strong-arm tactics against rebel privateers on the high seas. They threatened to execute those privateers, and that also angered the British. Tensions between the U.S. and the British governments are rising rapidly. In addition, Lincoln had urged the seizure of Haitian land to colonize ex-slaves, and that angered the French. And while not as quite angry at the Americans as the British are right now, we are seeing some tensions rise across the Atlantic. And so it is now time to see what happens in August and September of 1861. Hello and welcome back to My Own Worst Enemy. You heard the recap there. The rebels were pushed back to Richmond, Virginia, the first Battle of Manassas. The northern newspapers are excited, saying, well, this is what we told you. It's going to be a quick war. War is going to be over soon. We're going to have these rebels under control in no time. So are they? We're going to find out. We're already into our alternate history here with that first Union victory at Manassas. So we're going to dive in and see what happens. Before I start, just a quick note. I don't know if I'm going to play an entire turn through. These turns are going to get long with the number of random events, and the number of battles that I can have in a game or you can have in a game can be quite lengthy. You can have several battles and that could drag out a turn. So I may split the turns up. We'll see how it goes. If they get to be more than 45 minutes, an hour or so, and I'm probably going to do that just to make the videos a little more tolerable for you guys to watch. All right, so before we start, there's one thing I do need to do, and because the Union did win that battle at Manassas, they should have received a veteran unit for that. So the rules state, and I'll grab the rule book here to verify this with you, and I think I mentioned this before, so victory promotion. If a stack wins a battle, one veteran brigade may be taken out of the available veterans box and placed in the stack. It is deployed in the same flipped, unflipped status as the stack it was joining. It says cavalry counts as veterans for this rule. So any of these units that we had up here for the Union, we could deploy with McDowell now. So I should have done that at the end of the battle. Not a big deal that I'm catching it now, but we will go ahead and pull out let's just pull they're all pretty much the same strength here as far as their strength points go. So I'm going to pull the 2nd U.S. regulars out and just stack them with McDowell to show that a veteran unit was created there. They earned some experience there with that successful battle. Just one housekeeping thing that I missed there. That's corrected. Let's go ahead and jump back in now to the sequence of play for turn number 2. We have moved our turn marker up to turn number 2. And the first thing we do is bring out these 3 units. They entered the game. It's the only time this happens in the game, that there are counters on the board that we bring this. And of course, as a note, we're now in August, September of 1861. So what units are we putting out? Well, McClellan, Little Mac is coming out. Little Napoleon himself is coming out. And I'm going to put him in the available generals box to the side because he has special rules associated with him. So we're going to be seeing him pretty darn soon. And then the Army of the Potomac also is going to come out. And I'm going to put that next to McClellan because he's also going to, the Army of the Potomac also has special rules surrounding McClellan. And the Army of Northern Virginia for the Confederates will be available. I'm going to put that next to the available generals box so that we remember that that is there. So that's it. Our turn marker is on turn number 2. And we will commence now with this sequence of play. So this time we actually have the logistics phase. We skipped this in the first turn because the war was just getting underway and there wasn't much in the way of logistics to concern ourselves with. Both sides were just starting to ramp up for the war. So now they're actually starting to get to where they can send out men and supplies. So that's what we're going to do here. We're starting with the C.S.A. first, C.S.A. logistics phase. First thing we do is deploy generals from the available generals box to the map. So the way that works is we have our available generals up here. We only have 2 for the Confederates. They can go anywhere on the map as long as it's a friendly territory they're going into and they can trace supply like they normally would. In other words, you have to trace supply to two friendly cities. So we have, who do we have here? We have Hill and looks like Van Dorn. And so of these two generals, it looks like Hill is the better of the two with 464. That's the offense firepower, defense firepower, and initiative. And then Van Dorn has 415. He has 5 for his initiative, so that's pretty good. But his defense rating is only 1, so that's not so great. So I think with these two generals, and the other thing is I don't have to put these out at all if I don't want to. I could hold them in the available box until I think I need them. Remember that during a turn, I can use one of my phases to deploy one of these generals instead of moving on the board. So that's something to consider. I think I'm going to go ahead and put both of these out though. So let's put Hill out first. He's the better of the two, like I said, and I think, so the Union, I know in this game, and I haven't experienced it yet, or we haven't got that far, I know the Union can conduct naval landings between these two white lines on the map. So I kind of want to put a couple of generals back from these main front lines for now anyway. So I think I'm going to put Hill in Columbia with the thought that I can move him pretty quickly to the East Coast here if need be. And then I think I'm going to put Van Dorn in Jackson. So that is my deployed generals. Now we go to step number 2. Transfer brigades from reserves to generals. And so this is where, and when you deploy these generals, you can also do this. You can deploy them with the reserves. And that's what it's stating here. We can also deploy cavalry and veterans that we have, and we do have some for the Confederates, so we'll look at that in a second. So I didn't want to transfer any reserves to these generals I just deployed. And I will caution you that you really want to think about that because the Confederates cannot strategic reserve to and from the reserves like the Union does. They can't decide to move units into the reserves and then at some later point bring them to a different general on the map. So you really need to think about how you're going to assign brigades to generals if you're playing as the Confederates. So with that said, I'm going to, well, let's see, where are we at on the turn sequence here? So yeah, we're transferring our brigades. Now our current reserves for our brigade sits at 25 for the Confederates. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy these. Now I have looked at this map before this session to kind of decide where I wanted some of these units to go to save some time here for the video. And I've got the numbers. I'm going to put those out as I had kind of decided to do. And so the first thing I also want to do is, this is Jackson and Johnston. And Johnston has, and I'll show you this. Johnston has 2 of those stars above his name. So that is his cunning value. And if he has the cunning value, that'll come into play in a battle if generals have these cunning values. But it also comes into play with this Army of the Northern Virginia. You have to have a general with a cunning value on it in order to deploy the Army of Northern Virginia. So what I'm going to do is place the Army of Northern Virginia marker out with these 2 generals next to McDowell here. The other limitation being that the Army of Northern Virginia must stay in Virginia. Funny how that works. So I'm going to put it on top here. And I believe that is Virginia, right? Yeah, there's Strasburg, so that's got to be Virginia. And the state borders are these ones in red, so that's what I'm looking at there as well. So we did that. We've deployed our Army of Northern Virginia is next to McDowell there now. And as far as deploying these brigades, so the first thing I want to do is Jackson is in here. I want to give Jackson 8 brigades. What I will do is reduce the C.S.A. reserves marker down by 8. So he's at 25. That'll take us all the way down to 17. I'm going to move these charts down a little bit so I can see them better. Like I said, the writing on these counters is really hard to read. So Jackson has 1 right now. So if I give him 8 more, he's going to have 9. And then Beauregard, who got pushed back to Richmond, I want to give him 3 more brigades. So we would find Beauregard, who is at 0, because remember, he lost everybody, and he now has 3. And I will bring the reserve marker down 3 to 14. And then Price, if you'll recall, also lost some brigades. So Price is sitting over here with 2. I want to give him 4 more brigades. So let's do that. So we'll take our reserves down to 10. And Price, we will increase his by 4. So he goes from, he already had 2, so he's going to have 6 brigades. And now I want to give, we have 2 generals over here in Tennessee. We have Bragg and Johnston, with Johnston being the better of the 2. So I'm going to give Johnston 8 brigades. So that is going to take us 2 in our reserves. And I'm going to take, that's A.S. Johnston. Where is he at? He is at 1. So he's now going to have 9. And finally, I want to add those last 2 to Magruder, who's sitting here. And Magruder, I think, also has 1, so he's now going to have 3. Taking our reserves down to 0. Now, I did not have to deploy all those reserves. I could have held some back if I'd wanted to, but I didn't want to hold any back. So that is going to do it for moving our brigades to our generals. And so now we can deploy veterans or cavalry if we so choose. I think, and these are all, I don't think there's any cavalry. These are all veteran units. And again, these are all 224s as far as their strengths go. And I don't have to deploy these if I don't want to. I can hold them in the reserve and pull them out later as need be. Kind of plug holes where they develop. But I'm gonna take, we'll take Rhodes. I'm gonna put Rhodes with Price. What else do we have here? We have the 1st Tennessee Volunteers. I'm gonna put those with Johnston down here in Nashville. And who is this? The 1st Missouri, it looks like. I probably should have put those with Price. It would have made more sense. Actually, let's do that. Just to be semi-accurate with where these volunteers come from. So that would leave the Rhodes, Alabama. And I'm going to put them with Hill. Because like I said, I don't know what's going to happen with landings down there. So I'm going to want to deploy all of those. And let's go back now to our sequence of play card. We are now at 3, but that's only for the US. And what it's telling us, and we'll see that when we get to, well, we'll just go through that when we get to the US phase. It's a US only step in this logistics phase. 4, it says transfer brigades from generals to reserves. Well, the Confederates can't do this. Remember, the Confederates cannot transfer from generals back to the strategic reserve. So this rule should also say for the US only, and it doesn't. It does remind us, though, that you can move veterans to the map as needed. Step 5, generals without brigades may transfer from the map to the available generals box. So we could do this for the Confederates, and we're not going to because it doesn't make sense here because I've already deployed the generals the way I wanted to, but you can take a general that does not have brigades from the Confederates on the map and put those in the available box. Why would you want to do that? Well, that's one way to kind of move your generals around for the Confederates to also, like I said, if you've got a weakness developing somewhere, that's one way you can move your generals around through this logistics phase. All right, and then it says 6, roll 1 die for each USA unit in the disabled veterans box. On a 1 or 2, it may deploy on the map as in step 2. Otherwise, it stays in the box. So we don't have any disabled veterans right now. So those would be up here in the disabled veterans box. No chance of those coming out. And it says, it says roll 1 die for each USA unit. I'm wondering what happens to the Confederate ones. We'll have to look that up. I have to make a note of that. And then finally, place or move Grand Army markers. Well, I got ahead of myself and I placed it anyway, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. That's where I wanted it. That will be it for the C.S.A. logistics phase. And now we go into the 2.2, which is we repeat those steps, but now with the Union. So let's do that. First thing we do is deploy generals from available to the map. We have 4 generals, and the Army of the Potomac is sitting there. Well, the first thing I've got to do is grab McClellan, because the special McClellan rule is that if he can be on the map, he's got to be on the map. And also with that, if the Army of the Potomac marker's out there, it's got to go with McClellan. We will put McClellan out, and he also has to stay within 3 hexes of Washington. So I'm going to put him in Washington right now. We'll just start him off there. McClellan does have 2 cunning stars, but look at his attack strength is 1 and his initiative is 2, so that's not so great. So we're going to put McClellan in Washington with Honest Abe there and deploy the other generals. So who do we have? We have Grant, Porter, and Pope. And again, I think I want to bring all of these out. I think I want to hold anybody back. Although it is a little easier, I think, to move the Union generals around and brigades around in the Confederates. I don't think that. I know it is. But we're going to pull him out anyway. And Grant he is a really good general. I'm going to put him in Cincinnati to start. That way we can move him east or west as needed. And then Porter, who is the better of these two? We got Porter is a 5.54, so he's the better. Pope has 5.24. I'm going to put Porter. I'm going to start him in Evansville. I'll put him in a river hex, so he will not have to conduct initiative there. And Pope, I'm going to put, where do we want to put Pope? And remember, this is an alternate history universe now, so they may not be deploying where they did historically, or even at the same time as they did historically. I'm just going to put Pope in, I'm going to put him with Lyon right now. Put him in Cairo here with Lyon. We still have Rosecrans over. Yeah, I'm going to do that. So that's going to be my deploying of my generals there for the U.S. And now we transfer brigades from our reserves. And again, and I'm going to go ahead and turn to the special McClellan rules for this, because again, we have rules around McClellan that state, and here they are, 8.2, that states that when McClellan is out, at the end of this logistics phase for the U.S., he has to be the general that has the most brigades assigned to him. So we have to consider that. And I did when I came up with these numbers. Like I said, I did this off camera, but I'm going to give McClellan 8 brigades. Now, this was an agonizing choice because, first of all, the Union has 30 in reserve, but I'm going to give McClellan 8. And the reason being is that, yeah, it's a lot of brigades, and it seems kind of like a waste since he really can't do much with them. But if he has 8, that means I can assign these other generals out here 7 or fewer, so I can still have a pretty good size army out there. So we're going to give him 8, and that'll bring our reserves down to 22. And we take McClellan's brigade, max brigade marker, and did I put it out? I probably didn't put that out. Probably have to find that. So let me look in this box to find McClellan's brigade max. All right, right on top there. I must have set that aside knowing I would have to do this anyway. So we'll put McClellan at 8. And then I wanted to give Grant 5. So we're going to take our reserves are at 22, so they'll go down to 17. And we will increase Grant's. Now I did have his out, it looks like. So Grant's going to have 5. And then we have, I wanted to give McDowell. So McDowell was the one who lost some brigades in that last battle, and he is currently at 4. So I want to give him 3 more to get him up to 7. So we'll go down to 14, and we'll take McDowell up to 7. And then I had Fremont over here. I wanted to give him some brigades. I wanted to give him 5. So that's going to take our reserves now down to 9. And Fremont was at 2. So now he's going to have 7. Do that. And Lyon is sitting in this fort. I believe he's in a fort. No, he's not. He's in Cairo. About to be sitting in a fort. So I want to give Lyon 7. So that'll take our reserves down to 2. And Lyon will now have 8. And yes, you were correct. I just contradicted myself. I can't give him 7. I have to give him 1 less than that because McClellan has to have more. So we will move him back down 1. So we give him 6 instead of 7. That'll leave me with 3 instead of 2. And then, but what I'm going to do though is I wanted to give Butler over here some in Fort Monroe. And Butler currently has 1, so I'm going to give him 3 more. That'll get him to 4. And that will take our reserves down to 0. So like I said, I didn't have to use all those, but I did. And now we can grab our veteran units that are available. We have a veteran and a cavalry unit. Looks like there's Custer. So let's place the veteran Irish brigade first. And I'm going to put him with McDowell. Well, we already have some veterans there. I don't know if I want to double stack. Let's put him with Fremont. Well, no, let's put him with... Did I give anybody to Rosecrans? I think he's got 2. So no, Grant has 5. Let's put him with Grant. The Irish are going to fight with Grant. If Grant fights. And then Custer, we'll just put him out towards the west here with... Again, maybe not be historical, but that's what we're going to do. So that's the veterans deployed. And then, so this is where I skipped step number 3 for the Confederates. But for step number 3, it says the USA, you can transfer brigades from one general to another within 3 hexes. So they could actually shuffle their brigades around if they are within 3 of each other. So that's kind of cool. But I don't want to do any of that because I've got them where I want them now. We may be doing that later in the game, though. We'll have to wait and see. And now we can transfer brigades from generals back to the reserves, but there's no need to do that here. Generals without brigades can go to the available box if we choose. We don't need to do that here either. And we have no disabled veterans in the disabled veterans box to attempt to bring back out. Finally, place or move Grand Army markers. So I'm going to take the Army of the Potomac, and we know that that's got to go with McClellan. And it is currently situated in Washington, D.C. And that takes us through the logistics phase. And like I was saying, we're already over 20 minutes into this, so roughly 20 minutes. So even the logistics phase itself can be time consuming. And it would have been a lot longer if I hadn't kind of predetermined where I wanted to move some of these brigades out onto the map for. And for future turns, I may do that with you. I may think out loud and bring those brigades on the map in advance, but I wanted to save time, at least for this turn. All right, so now we go to the next thing on the sequence of play, and that is 2.3, which is the first random events phase. And so for that, I am going to need to bring out the Chit Pull Cup. There's 4 left in there. So let's go for the first random event chit, and it is Event 3. So I'm going to grab the random events book. Remember that we are in 1861 still. And so let's set this down. I'm going to put this chit marker over here because we don't put that back in the cup. And so the first thing we do is pull out some generals, it looks like. So let's start with the US first. I will grab it. So Thomas is coming out and Halleck is coming out. So let's find those. All right. So, and I grabbed their brigade max counters too. We'll go ahead and put those on the 0. We have those for the next logistics. Or before if we need case maybe. So Halleck and Thomas, we'll put those up in our available, which I'm just going to last time. All right, so the second thing is the second thing here. A lot of verbiage on this one. So it's Juan A. Quintero, Confederate agent in Mexico, allies with anti-Juarez Mexican states. Roll for French entry. Uh-oh. The roll for French entry is where we have to roll a d6 and move the French entry marker up by that much. And so let's do that. Roll a d6. And it is a 4, so that marker's got to go up by 4. And so that's right. Yeah, so it's the add or subtract. In this case, it's certainly adding. So we're going to move that up by 4. We're at 4 now, so we're going to take that up to 8. Take that D6 out of there. So now the French are getting almost as angry as the British. Not good for the US at all. All right, so what's next on the events chart here? U.S. sharpshooters funneled into regular units. I'm not quite sure what this means. Let's look it up. It's got a little symbol of looks like a hand with a pin in it. And again, these are all explained in the random events section of this book. So this is an enlistment. Roll a die and add that number of brigades to the player's reserve. If the word militia is in the event and it was not here, the brigades must be added to a general in that state. So basically we're going to roll another d6 and add it to the U.S. reserve. That's good for the U.S. Put this back down here, so we're probably going to be referring to that again. So let's grab a blue d6 and see how many we're going to get in the reserve for the... Ooh, 6. That's good. So we go from 0 to 6. And we'll get the D6 out of there. And we'll continue right along. Here's another verbiage paragraph. Patriotic gore. If this is the very first chit drawn in the game, well, it's not. I don't think this is going to apply. Yeah, so this is not going to apply since this was not the first chit pulled in the game. So basically they were looking at a uprising in Maryland against the Union. So this is another reason why I like this game. It's more randomness to the game, right? So if we had pulled this in the first turn, this would have happened. So if it didn't, we'll just move right on along. C.S.A. Cobb's Legion, and then C.S.A. Texas Rangers. So these are the veterans, I believe, that come in. Any event preceded by this will add veterans, cavalry, and Grand Army units. As it's telling us here, Cobb's Legion and Texas Rangers for the CS. So let's C.S.A. So let me grab those. Grab the box here. I can find those. All right, we'll put that back. So the first thing we have is Cobb's Legion. We'll put that in the available top where we're putting our available veterans. And then the Texas Rangers. Let's see, there was something about the Texas Rangers. Deploy on any C.S.A. controlled hex in Texas. That makes sense. We'll send them to Marshall. We'll start them off in a city there. How's that? All right, moving right along. USA, Jeff Davis. So let me grab the book. What does that mean? That's got a big dot, it says. So this is a special event. So let's see how this impacts the game. When such an event is called for, place a penny in the... Okay, this is the off-board special events. So these are special actions that we will be able to take. So there should be there's a Jeff Davis special action. So I'm going to grab a blue marker instead of a penny, and we'll place that on Jeff Davis. So it says Confederate ex-general can't resist the urge to meddle. USA may point to one C.S.A. stack that is trying to make a reaction move and prevent that move. That may come in handy for the U.S. And then now we have the C.S.A. Southern Telegraph Company, and that is here. So orders transmitted at the speed of electricity. If any C.S.A. stack fails its initiative, play this chip and re-roll. So it's basically a re-roll for initiative. Let me grab a marker for that. Getting quite a few markers on these cards, so that's probably a good thing. I remember those are there, so I play them. And so now we're at C.S.A. Contraband Order. USA declares that all captured Southern slaves are contraband of war and will be confiscated from their owners. So this is a event preceded by a star. This is an inflation event, so it's positive. So it's positive for the C.S.A., but it's a negative event for the C.S.A. Roll a die and add or subtract that number from the country's inflation level. Well, this is going to add to the C.S.A.'s inflation level, which currently sits at, where does it sit? I think it's at 0 still. Yeah, it's up here at 0, so we're going to move that up to 3. Brigade is over. And we'll put our inflation for the Confederates at 3. And now we have another inflation special event. This time it's for the USA. It's a minus sign in front of it, so their inflation will be reduced here, which is a good thing. Old Abe, the Battle Eagle. Brave bird adopted as mascot for the U.S. Army. And so we're currently sitting at 3, so let's roll the D6 again. We'll subtract this time. Well, it's only a 1, but we'll take it, so that's going to take inflation down to 2. And we'll get the die out of the dice tower. And that is it for random events. So I'm going to take the random events book and set it off to the side. All right, and now we're at 2.4, the naval phase. So that's up here with this naval warfare map. And I'm going to use that solitaire aid that I used last time. We have 2 ships for the Union and 1 for the Confederates. The Confederate ship was the Moroccan pirates. I'm just going to leave those sitting in the Central Atlantic. They're looking for to add +3 to the Union's inflation if they can. And so now we will roll to see where these 2 Union ships go. I grab 2d6. So the first one we will roll and consult our handy chart. That looks like 8, and 8 says North Pacific. All right, and so North Pacific is over here. I've got that upside down, and then we'll roll again. See where the second one goes. And it 3, 7. So on the chart, that is the North Atlantic. Close, but no dice. And that's how we'll have those laid out. And I'll get this back. All right, so that is it for the naval phase. Now the next thing we would do is go into the actual pulse phase, where we would move our armies around and battle. But what I'm going to do is stop it here, because like I said, we're already over 30 minutes or around 30 minutes. I'm going to stop it here, and we'll break this turn up into 2 parts. When we come back, we will of course conduct the remaining phases, and the battle phase might be a little bit longer than normal. That's why I want to do this. We also have another random events phase that will come up after this. But what I will do is, since we are going to stop it just before the battles, I'm going to, let's zoom in to the map a little bit closer here. We'll take a look here at what we're looking at when we do come back. We have McClellan is in Washington, D.C. Now he does have, if we look at our brigade max marker for him, he's got 8 brigades with him. We have McDowell sitting there with 7. And we have the Army of Northern Virginia sitting here. So this is an area for potential battle for sure. We still have Beauregard, who we have replenished his brigades back up to 2 or 3, so he doesn't have a heck of a lot. And then we still have Rosecrans sitting here. He has 2, and he's really can't do much. Grant has 5, and he has a veteran unit with him. Porter is here. We just deployed him. And then Lyon, of course, is sitting there with 7. Now we can probably move him into that fort. And let's slide over just a little bit, and we'll take a look at the Western Theater. Fremont is sitting here, and we gave Fremont 7 brigades. And I really think I'm going to have Fremont march into one of these cities in Missouri. And of course, we do still have Price sitting down here, and he may want to do the same thing, maybe make a grab for Missouri, not really sure. We also have these Delaware Scouts in Kansas, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, they can march down to try to take these Indian territories from the Confederates. We will have to be wary of inflation. And down here in Texas, you can't see them, but we also have the Confederate Texas Rangers. So these are things to consider for next time, the strategy, how we want to move our troops. So if you have any ideas what might be a good thing for the Union and or the South to do, leave those in the comments below, and maybe I will work those into the battles when we come back. I'll consider those. And that is it. I wanted to keep this one short. And let me know also if you like a shorter format, or if you want me to just play an entire turn in one sitting. I know that would make the videos probably over an hour long. And I know some of you don't like to sit and watch videos that long, but let me know. Let me know if you like for me to break them up like I'm doing now, or if you'd like to just see them all at once. As always, if you like what I do, please like the video, consider subscribing, because that really helps. There's a Patreon support option available if you'd like to do that. That would be greatly appreciated. And I will see you back here next time.